listeners. Welcome to What About This, episode 18, part 2. We are back. I'm Keith.
I'm Kyle.
I'm Travis.
Producer Josh.
We're getting better at that.
Yeah, we're never going to be great at
We're
it.
getting better.
Yeah,
at
that's
that.
true.
We used to not remember our names.
So thanks for coming back to part 2. This is going to be the second half of our conversation, where we started with Disneyland, and sort of where we ended was getting into the idea of names and how corporations come up with names. So Josh, that's where you split this. When we start talking about, we're going to start talking about Nike and how Nike and Amazon and Disneyland, what the impact of their name is, and how they've come up with their names and what that means for what they're trying to do for us. And sort of the question that we're asking ourselves is like, what's in a name? Like, why do we have feelings about certain names? What do we associate with the names that we have? And that's not just the corporations, but also people. And so we get into a lot of different things about what a name means, what it refers to. We get into things like we talk about like the idea of the sets of propositions that a name is. What can we take away from our sort of ourselves and still have our name refer to us? It gets a little convoluted at times, but we wanted to sort of get into this idea of names and namings and how we associate these things with people. And what that means. And so we hope you enjoy the second half of the conversation. Thank you for sort of being patient and sticking around and coming back to listen to part 2. So again, as always, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at WAT_podcast, rate and review us on iTunes. That always helps us out. You can find us on all the podcast places, Stitcher, iTunes, podcast.com, Podbean, wherever you find it. We're probably there. Leave us feedback. Let us know how what you think. Ask us questions, send us questions, and we'll try to get to them at some point. If you have an idea for future episodes, let us know.
And share.
Oh yeah, and share us. If you do like us, share us with your friends. Let other people know that we're out here just sort of trying to start conversations. All right, thanks.
So this is like, I was thinking about this a couple years ago with like Nike, and you were able to shine some light on the root of Nike. But for just the average person that doesn't know, what I'm going to have Keith share with us is I thought about why do people why is Nike Nike? Like, why? Right. First of all, the name, I don't know why. Why do I even like it? And I was thinking about, and then you have the swoosh, and and again, so because I don't know where all this comes from. Mm-hmm. Once you learn where it comes from, you go, oh, did they know how genius they were being? How genius is it? Mm-hmm. And so, but I was thinking through this. I was thinking about like names, like having a name that I would maybe never choose to name my child because I didn't really care for it. It's just bland, or especially in the age of finding unique names, right. or cool names.
There's no kids named Mark anymore.
Yeah, like it's very rare that you're like this is Steve,
right?
And this is Bill, or this is Tom, and so but see, so I started thinking about this because of how many people that I interact with because of what I do, how many students I interact with because of what I do. And I started thinking, dang, your name kind of is lame. Or it's kind of Barney, or it's kind of dorky, or whatever. And I don't know, I mean, it's subjective, but I think I'm right. And so I would go...
Again, see episode 1.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But it's that which is behind the name, right. That now when I think of the name isn't what I think about, it's what's behind the name.
Right.
And so the product, right. If you will, or the culture behind it, or the personality behind it is absolutely fascinating, and I think is why that whole Star Wars, Disneyland, Marvel, right. Disneyland can happen.
Because Disney is not interested in selling anything but Disney. The image,
it's
the
like the concept,
culture, the concept, to your point, the name of Disney.
Right.
They want that.
So they won't partner with somebody else that's going to try and sell other stuff within there.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Because you go, when I think of Disney, whoa, what comes to mind? Right. So much. But Disney's not I think of Disney like it's this really special name,
Right.
and it has all this history behind it, has all this culture behind it, has all this
just
experience.
some dude's last name.
Yeah, and it moves me.
Right.
But if his name was my last name, Carrero, I would argue
Carrera Land.
Yeah,
Well,
close.
Yeah.
But we would see Carrero in the same light if if his last name was Carrero because of what he created and produced.
Right.
And so then I was like, what does Nike even mean? And of course Keith goes, well,
Yeah.
So before I get there, I do want to talk, because this is where how we got there. We were talking about this idea that it's actually called late capitalism. This is the term that we use, late capitalism, and it describes the idea that the transition. We were talking about this before we started. It describes the transition between capitalism selling products and late capitalism was where companies start to sell concept, right? So we were saying, like, notice, like, if you just go, and I chose this, look at a paper towel commercial. They're not selling you the paper towel anymore. They're selling you the concept of family, the concept of the mom who cleans up, and all that. Right, and that's what they're selling you. Because we're saying the difference really between products now is so like, you're not, how close are we to creating a better paper towel? Like, they are what they are at this point. Like, so they realize there's a limit to what to selling the product. So the company that I chose that really does this, and they almost started this way, was Amazon. What does Amazon sell?
Everything.
Right. So Amazon as a company doesn't actually sell anything.
They just
right?
facilitate it?
They facilitate it. They're not even selling you the idea that they're not even selling you shipping.
Didn't they just start to profit like
right.
last
So
year?
this is my point, is that for the first 10 years of their company, they didn't, or however long it's been around, they didn't make any money, because the guy wasn't Jeff Bezos. Yeah. Wasn't interested in that. He started his company to change culture. He started to
yes.
Because what has he sold? He sold us the fact that you can click on a button and the product shows up to your door the next day.
Well, look at
He's
how many
drastically changed the way we understand consumption.
Look at how many companies are mimicking what he's done.
So the point was,
and how many companies aren't around anymore?
Yeah,
because of that.
To think about this, what is Amazon? Like, what is Amazon? Right?
It's almost like it's like a facility.
There's a couple different, like, you go etymologically, there's a couple different sources, right? You can talk about the Greek mythology of the Amazonian women. You can talk about the Amazonian rainforest, the Amazon River. None of those have anything to do with Amazon.com.
Mm-hmm. No.
The only thing possibly is that, like, people used to transport goods down the Amazon River. That's the closest I can get.
But so it's like this. There was an idea,
right?
And then they attached that name. Tells you that idea,
right?
And if that idea is good,
so the point for Nike, now we can go back to Nike. So the point with Nike, the guy who started Nike probably did start out to create a better shoe. That was his point. So that's a product. At some point, Nike had to realize they're no longer selling running shoes. They're selling something else entirely.
They're selling a lifestyle.
Right, they're selling a lifestyle. So Nike, now there's both connection to the product and the concept in the name. The name itself originates from the Greek goddess of victory. Probably not pronounced Nike, probably like Nike or something like that. I'm not sure exactly how you pronounce it. So that makes sense, right? He's trying to create a shoe, he's trying to create athletics, goddess of victory, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Did he know there was going to be such a victory? Right.
And so that was the other thing we got into. And then, like, the swoosh comes from an ancient Greek statue of the goddess of victory that's sort of in that shape, in the swoosh shape.
So for whatever reason, he likes that.
He likes it, attaches it to it. It makes sense. There's some necessarily, but what we were saying is that it has gone far beyond that. Like, it's now, like, because you didn't even know, Travis, that's how that came up.
I go, where did that name come from? And you're like, well, and so and so to the point though is, even so, his company could have bombed.
Right.
And we wouldn't care. We wouldn't be talking about Nike. It's like Obey, and you have what is it, Shepard Fairey, and all that, the whole Obey propaganda stuff, and the eyes. What was it?
The giant, Andre the Giant.
Andre the Giant. He took that, and I went, Obey. Like, do I even? So here's the question I always ask: do I really like
Obey?
Do I really like these things?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and now I would say yes, I do love Nike product. Like, they make good. They come out, and they also come out with stuff I think sucks.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but as a whole, they've continued to do this thing,
right,
over a span of so many years. Like, the same thing with Disney. They continue to, like, maintain excellence, but almost feel like they keep getting better. So this progression and the constant potential, and then so you go.
So here's the question: have they really gotten better, or have they just sold you on the fact that they've gotten better?
I don't know. I don't know. Well, so I would argue, I don't know about like when it comes to quality. I'm sure that there has been advancements in the Nike shoe.
Right. Technologically, yes, I'm sure.
Yes, that we probably make easy argument for that. But I still think it's almost it's what it so the name is irrelevant.
Right.
It's what's behind the name.
Right.
And so, Josh, Kyle, Keith, and Travis, those are just whatever, like just simple names. And so
I just punched my microphone on accident.
He was so
He's
mad
upset about
that
his
they called him simple.
Just backhanded it actually.
And so I meet kids, students, people all the time, but I put together so their name has this meaning, this power behind it. And I thought that was so fascinating because I went, wow, you totally made me like that name, but I don't even like the name. I like you. Like I like what you're selling me. I like your product. I like Amazon. But even when you say, like, when you look at Amazon, and when you see Amazon Prime, though, it takes you to another level because of what it means. It means tomorrow.
Right.
It means a couple hours.
That's now invoked a feeling within me of satisfaction.
But it is nothing.
Right.
It's nothing.
It's literally, they've just agreed, yeah, we'll get it to you faster.
But it's a symbol. It's a symbol for something.
They've always been able to get it to you faster.
Yeah, but it's
but they put that Prime on there, and you're like,
and you went
Prime.
And you kind of look around, even though no one's there, and you're going, I'm getting this tomorrow.
Right. I'm like, Amazon, just sell me a house already.
Yeah.
Is that so? Like when you go to buy a car and they're like, you know what? Because I like you, I'm gonna slash $2,000 off the price, and you look around, you're like, okay.
Yeah.
But you see a bunch of other guys looking around like that.
Yeah.
Because they just do that no matter what.
And then
you're a sucker.
And if you do research into the car prices, like, you realize that like the car's really not worth, like, the $2,000 is going to cost them nothing. Or the other thing I've always wondered is, like, when you go into a place, I'm trying to think of, like, I mean, like a Walmart or like a place where it seems like it's discounted. And if you ever looked at a product over time consistently, it's always on sale, and then you just realize that's just the price of the thing. Like, it was never the price that you said you're discounting it from. Like, I could say it's worth $50 and I'm giving it to you for $5.
No, but the mind goes,
yeah, but it's like, I was never gonna sell it to you for $50.
No,
like, so it's like, that's part of. I'm sorry,
marketing.
Of course, I took us off track. But.
No, but not really, because what you're still saying is there's something about that name's a sell.
Right.
Again, it kind of goes back to, why do they put $4.99, not $5? Well, because you're more likely to convince yourself of buying it, and there is like, so that I don't know, is that part of is that part of their gimmick, their culture? And I just think it's interesting to feel what that which is behind the name invokes in you. Like you said, it gives you a feeling,
right?
And that's the thing with Disneyland, with anything, you go, this name is nothing more than how a means for me to identify the real behind it.
Well, and then we get into this idea of how that's then become doubled up on itself in the age of Instagram, where now you are not only are you selling a feeling, but you're selling an entire image.
A lie.
Right, you're selling an image that is constructed in a way that we know.
I guessed.
Yeah. So it's like, the idea is like, when I'm interested in buying something, how much of our motivation today, or how much of motivation today, is sometimes like, I want to buy that thing not because it's a good product, because it'll look good on Instagram. How much of it has aesthetics come back to the primary consideration of a product rather than the quality?
Well, yeah, I mean, and what did Kyle, you brought this up a couple years ago, is the idea of going to the destination is no longer the objective, but it is the destination as a means to get the picture on my Instagram, which is not even like, you're giving them like, you're not even experiencing the real experience, because you're focused on this other fake experience. Or
I'm
gonna read something again. So there's the images. The last image that Baudrillard said, the last phase of the image, it bears no relation to any reality whatever. It is its own pure simulation. So when you go and if you're going specifically to take the picture has no bearing on reality anymore.
Right.
It's its own thing.
It's how, it's its own it's a false interpretation of your life because you want it to look that way.
That's like people who have Instagram profiles strictly about them at Disneyland.
Right.
And like not only is Disney getting free marketing, but you're essentially like creating another I don't know. I don't want to say like reality, but you're making people think that you're something that you're not. But so, the name is propelling that.
Right. Mm-hmm. So you're crafting new artifice out of the stripping down of artifice, right? So it's interesting that we can never really get away from this idea that part of human nature is to put this mask on. Mm-hmm. But again, I've just noticed a change in products over the last 5 years of how they're just getting more and more pretty. Products are getting more beautiful. Mm-hmm. The average and honestly, in my own, I will like. So I'm just obviously you all can't see it, but there's this. It's a pen. It's no more functional than any average pen, but I bought it because I liked how it looked.
Mm-hmm. Looks very sleek.
It's sleek. It's charcoal. It's designed. So it's designed well. Meaning I didn't buy it because it worked better than other pens. Same thing with the pad on my the case on my iPad. The case on my iPhone, the wallet I carry. I buy them not because they're better. Mm-hmm. In fact, I'll read a review. So I did this when I wanted to buy like one of those cases that's like looks like a book and it's a wallet. And I read a review of one. It's like it doesn't have leather. It's like it's not the best quality leather. And my immediate thought was like, I don't care about that.
Yeah,
it looks better.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So it's like I'm immediately thinking about what's this going to look like rather than what is it actually going to be. So if you look at just look at water bottles, not plastic water bottles, but like the reusable kind.
Yeah,
they've gotten far more aesthetic, than it would have been 10 years ago.
So function is not necessarily our main objective anymore.
And I'm not blaming something like Instagram. I'm just saying that's the medium by which that comes about, right?
Right.
That's the driver of why we want to look at things more aesthetically. There's nothing wrong with wanting to have something be more aesthetic.
Is that like how?
That's just where we are.
Is that like how women just fill jars with rocks and put them on tables and call them like centerpieces?
Yeah, I mean, and so it's an older. It's not new. I'm not suggesting it's new. It's just it has now expanded to the point where it is driving the design of our products more than it might have 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 50 years ago.
What are you saying the implication is to that, if any?
I mean, I think on one level we've sort of, if I'm going to say anything, I think we're a little bit past what Baudrillard was saying back in the 50s and 60s, is that we've now moved to a new moment. I don't know what that new moment necessarily is, but that was postmodernism. So that was after the modern era, after World War II, from about 1950 to probably the 90s, the late 90s, maybe early 2000s.
Is there something about we've cheapened the product, or because if you think
possible.
about it, even if we're kind of using Instagram as a not a bashing of, but just as an example, it's a cheapened product of the real.
I mean, it's possible.
Well, yeah, it's not. I feel like it's not even. Well, it would be tough to even call it real then, if you're saying that it's like this whole. It's a patchwork of like what you wish your actual life really was.
Yeah, and even those who, I don't know. I don't think everybody goes into it like that. Mm-hmm. Like there's something where we want to see what someone did.
Right.
We're interested in it's a means that in which we can kind of go, oh, that was cool. Like you went to Ireland and there's your 10 photos.
Right.
And you showed me some photos and now I don't have to come over and see them.
Yeah. And so could part of it be that they are just sparing me the parts of their life that I actually don't care about? They're like, if you're going to post on Instagram, post everything. And I'm like, don't post everything. Well, I don't care about you like having like cereal.
No. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Like, but also, like, think about this: is how many people you are friends with on Instagram, social media, but you're never gonna go to their house. You're not really ever gonna go to lunch. You know them because you know their spouse, or you know.
Yeah, you don't even really know them that well.
Yeah, you don't. But on some level, you're fascinated and interested about, like, they went on a trip, and you get to see, oh, that's interesting, and it's not. Maybe this doesn't even.
But so the one thing is you can argue is maybe to his point, to Baudrillard's point is could we say that simulation is actually more real than if you did know them? Because if you knew them, they'd be putting up all this other social barrier and they may feel a little bit freer to say what to post something.
So you're like sorting through all of the extra junk and getting straight to the.
So I guess what I'm saying is like, how many people, like friends, like so, Travis and I go on vacation. We go have coffee. I'm not going to sit there and show you photos of my vacation. And if I did, Travis would leave, right? And so there's a sense that I can do something that is a little bit more what I want to do.
Right, because you want him to see it.
I want you to see. I want to show you I haven't gone on vacation in a while, but I want to show you them. But I know that's not socially acceptable because I know that they're really boring. Like, I know that there's nothing to them.
Well,
nobody cares about it as much as you do.
Yeah, I'm not a professional photographer. You can find better pictures of wherever I went on Google right now.
Hey, so look at me at the Cliff of Moher.
Yeah, so it's like, but what I'm saying is that maybe then that it isn't much different than going to Disneyland and stripping yourself of all that stuff you know you're not supposed to do outside of Disneyland.
Well yeah, and because so I would entertain 3-year photos. Right? On some level, like, oh, that's cool, man, because I'm interested in the fact that I'm interested in you as a person, as a friend.
Right.
And I go, oh, that's cool. So we do the reciprocity, right?
Right.
Yeah, so you're being so ultimately you're being nice.
Yeah,
you don't really care.
You're
about
saying this is how this works, man. Like, this isn't a real interaction.
If we're friends, you have to look at these photos.
Yeah, and even make a comment of like, man, that must have been great.
Is that like when somebody shows you a YouTube video and you're like,
it better be loaded.
Yeah.
It also better be like 30 seconds or less. If you're trying to show me a 5-minute video, no.
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, because I've had to even go, oh, check this out, and I go, forget it, it's not loading, forget it, I'm sorry.
Also, this is a rant. This has nothing to do with anything. Can we get rid of all of the time lapse videos that are more than a minute long?
Oh yeah.
I don't want to see someone put together a boat for 4 minutes. I just don't care. Sorry.
Please.
It's a rant.
Sound like Josh was going to take care of that problem.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah. You sound like you had a solution.
Anyway.
I did. I'm just going to...
Listen, all this to say, are you guys going to get Disneyland passes or what?
I'm leaning towards yes.
Star Wars Land, Marvel Land, which I was even just reading. It's rumored to be Hollywood Land, but then it said it might be its own like expansion. So
guys, at this point,
how long until Disneyland just owns Anaheim?
That'd be fine.
I'm just saying. I'm not saying I'm against it. I'm just saying
Disney World's bigger.
How long until we buy it?
Yeah, I've heard that like Disney World is bigger than Anaheim.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
There's 33 Disney hotels for like the 5 parks.
So what I've heard is that Disney World, because they're not restricted by like the city and all that, they can build out, so tickets are cheaper, and they don't
also
have
because it's Florida.
Yeah, and they don't have overcrowding problems. But Disneyland, they keep raising the prices because they're trying to like keep the numbers manageable.
Right. Yeah. It's like if you go there, you like leave the airport and it's just like out in the country.
Yeah.
And it's like it's all.
I know that there's a lot of people in the world, but what blew my mind was that on average, I think it's 80. They guesstimate 80,000. Disneyland doesn't release their numbers, but. Researchers or analysts say that it's about at least 80,000 people
a day.
And you go, that's not like going and getting a burger.
Right.
That's a thing.
That takes effort. You have to plan to go to Disneyland. You can't just you can't just be like driving down Coachella, but no, I'll stop in Disneyland. Like that's not going to happen.
And how many of them are the stay-at-home moms with passes? I'm sure it's a lot, but still, there's a lot of other people that
it's
are going.
It's not necessarily 80,000 unique people every day.
Yeah, or every
new people. It's repeated. Like there's
but even still, you say that's still
and it's that like
it's a lot of humanity.
And then you go, is that per park?
Well, no, at Disneyland. Oh, you mean I'm thinking it's probably going to be total.
Disneyland.
That's
what I saw.
So I would just Disneyland.
Maybe California's different.
Are there many people going to specifically just California Adventure that aren't like pass holders?
I don't know. Sometimes.
Like so, if it's like a family.
I don't really know.
It's cheaper, right?
But if a family comes from like on vacation goes to Disneyland, they're probably going both. Not just one.
Buying the park hopper.
Right. So if the other times that like my wife and I went to just California Adventure, but we had passes. So like I'm gonna imagine that number's pretty close to both.
Right.
Like, it's gonna be pretty similar.
Right. And then you go to Disney World.
Right.
And there's including the water park. There's like 5 different parks.
Well, I've come to terms with not being able to buy a house in SoCal, so I'm just gonna spend that money on a Disneyland pass.
Amen.
So we're good.
I mean, I think it's about the same amount as a mortgage.
At least be happy while you're living somewhere small, right?
Yeah. Hey, true.
Yeah. Escape.
Well, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of this.
When you're sitting in your 1-bedroom apartment and you go, you know what? going to Disneyland.
Yeah.
I could stare
feel
at
good
this
about
wall,
myself.
or I
Yeah.
can go sit in Tomorrowland. You know, what am I gonna
Exactly.
do?
Which is funny because you ever like, it's like being on vacation and you're pretending to be, you're like, man, this is only gonna last another 4 days.
Mm-hmm.
But I do feel rich right now.
Right.
You're like, but I'm not.
Yeah, I don't know how they do it. Not necessarily just at Disneyland, but like, so my wife and I went to Hawaii over the last summer. It's like,
Do you have pictures? I'm just kidding.
the point,
Put 'em up on
the
the
point is,
ground.
I don't know how they do it, but how do they get me to spend the money on something that I would never spend money on before? Like I'm not spending $13 on a burger anywhere else, but I go there and I'm like, yeah, I'll do it.
Because it's the whole idea of you're
Yeah.
on vacation.
Yeah.
It's this. You're on vacation. This is what vacation costs.
Right.
And
yeah.
I deserve to be here, and therefore I deserve to have a $25 burger.
Mm-hmm.
Which is insane.
It's true.
When you really think about that, even mindset is you're going, oh, that's how you're approaching vacation?
Yeah.
I
it's
deserve
this
this.
is
Right.
that's probably even like a whole other episode, but I was just thinking like the fact that like I don't know where my brain goes when I'm like there and I make those decisions.
Well,
Because of the burger, man.
You're not yourself though. Like
Right.
you're in a setting where you can be anybody you want to be, because the people sitting in the chairs next to you, they don't know that you're a teacher. For all they know, you could be like an entrepreneur or something. A rat, yeah. Clearly.
Or,
Yeah.
I mean, just look at me, Kyle.
Yeah.
In what world, in what universe am I a rap mogul?
I believe it.
I can show you some pictures.
Yeah. I'll do
No,
some-
I mean, you mean like producer on that side, maybe, or
No,
like an
man.
actual artist?
Oh, man.
You know, there's some artists that like don't look that cool.
Does that ever disappoint you?
Wait,
though?
wait,
that implies
Hey, wait,
that
wait,
Keith
wait.
doesn't
Yeah,
look
like, are we just gonna go past that?
No,
I mean,
I think
know
that-
I don't,
I think
but
that
you didn't have to
I think
say
that
it.
you're-
Not over the air.
Yeah,
I think that you are. You know
have,
what I'm
I
implying.
have feelings, Kyle.
I think that what I am.
No, I
trying,
know, I know, no, I
You
know.
said it first, Keith.
Yeah. What I'm trying to say is that
Yeah.
a lot of rappers don't bear the image that you would assume that they have, and you could be in that category.
I guess
and
so.
there I said it.
And it all comes back to image.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Mm.
I feel like we didn't really cover the name thing as much as we wanted to.
No, keep
Oh,
going.
oh, okay.
I don't care. We can cut this out.
You gotta
I like it.
Keep it
This
in.
this feels natural. Cut out the silences, but I like this.
Let's
That's
just,
a little-
just
So if we do want to go back to it, because you did make some interesting points about how we understand, and I do think it's related to this idea of image and hyperreality, like how. So when you go up to like students,
Yes.
and you're like, I don't like your name, but I like you.
Yes.
Um,
Well, and what I'm
so
saying,
what is like what?
what I'm saying
Yeah,
is
expand it,
I
like, go
actually-
into that.
I find myself beginning to love the name.
Yeah.
But I don't even know that I love the name. That's where it came from. Is I go, I actually don't really like that name.
Mm-hmm.
Not like I hate the name, but it's not that I like. The name isn't what I actually liked, because, for example, Disney or Obey is like, for me, just a command.
Right.
And all of a sudden you made it a brand, and I have these associations, these attachments to that, these ideas. So when I think of, so I'll give a good example. There's shout out to Beef. There's a kid we call Beef. I'll just use him as an example, and his name is Jake. Jake's plain like my name, but behind that name is a something, is a person. There's a personality. There's all these things that flood to my brain when it comes to, there's memories.
Right.
There are experience of same memories, right? There's again everything, all that he is and all that it means to you. So I look at that and I go, oh, that's weird. Like, I don't hate the name Jake. I don't particularly go, I love the name Jake. But what I do is I go, I like Jake, and he has given meaning to that name. I call him Beef. That's an old nickname, but even that name is like, that's not an endearing name.
No, yeah.
Like, oh, Beef, but behind that name, and that's true of a lot of, my students or people that I interact with, is, even my wife's name is Amanda, and that's once again another kind of just a plain Travis name. But there's so much behind that name, and usually I don't use her name. I'm more like a nickname kind of guy, like a pet name, all that stuff with people. especially the closer that we are. And I have a hard time even like saying your real name unless it's so short, like Keith. And so it makes more sense. Even I call you Yosh. And I just kind of whatever reason I do that. And so it's interesting is I'll bring up another student of mine, a girl named Caroline. Well, I have all this history of like watching her grow up, and she's like super close to my wife and I, and like Caroline's again just like a Caroline, you know, and like people kind of like, hey Carol, because Carol sounds like a grandma, right? Or if her name was even Carol, but like she brings all of this personality, good, bad, the ugly experience, like all these kind of exchanges that you had with that person, and that is the name.
Right.
So I don't even know if I'm explaining this right, but it's like your name means, and so like if you really look back, and you would probably be able to speak to this more, is like people gave names that like meant something.
Right.
Like your name, there's like your name means this because it reflects you, your personality, your disposition. And I'm over here naming my son Tyson. Like, what is that? I just like the name.
Do you know what your name means?
Right.
No.
Mine means handsome. It really does.
It's true, man.
I know. It's aptly named.
One of the things I think we're talking about is like what do names actually refer to, right?
Yeah.
And there's a couple different philosophers. Bertrand Russell is one of them who says that like names don't actually refer to anything. Proper nouns don't actually refer to anything. They refer to a set of propositions about the like. So his example is
that's it.
His example is Aristotle doesn't refer to anything. It refers to maybe like the teacher of Alexander the Great or the Greek philosopher, right? So Aristotle is not empty of. It doesn't have its own meaning outside of the set of propositions that define Aristotle as a person, right? And one of the questions that we were going to get to in this conversation, and I don't think we got here. When I think about names, I think about this: what could I take away from my personality, myself, and still have Keith refer to me, right? What is Keith really referring to?
So like
right?
when somebody when somebody thinks,
like if I could say like,
yes,
if I took away professor, right? I'm no longer a professor. Does that name still associate with me, or like who am I? That like sort of how does the name relate to my core?
So
like
like
who I am
what
on
could
some level?
What could I take away? And yet when people still think of me,
I think of Kyle, they think
the
of
image
you.
would be the same.
Yeah.
So because they're
then
not
what are
thinking of the name.
What is the base? What are the core set of propositions that define who you are, and that gets attached to your name through the people who know you?
Are you saying that we don't think of the name, we think of what's behind the name?
Like who the person is.
Well, that's one sort of.
Well, that gives meaning
yeah, that's
to the
one
name.
definition.
The
That's
name
one way
is-
to think of it.
The
yeah.
name is just the means to like specify which
Identify
group of
that.
properties that you are
Right.
referring to.
How many properties?
That's the best thing I've ever said.
Yeah, that was. Hey, I went.
I said, I think I need to leave.
Kyle just blacked out.
So I'm
Still holding.
Yeah.
So that's the sort of thing that we think about with names, is this idea that, what is it actually referring to? Because there's no thing out there. I mean, could be, and part of it is there's a lot of people named Keith, so that's hard. But like even just say it's unique to me, there's no like thing out there in the world, and this can even connect back to our sense of Disneyland and our hyper reality and all that. Like, there's no thing out there that's like Keith is this. There's there's nothing definite.
It doesn't
about
start
my
with
name.
Keith. It actually doesn't start with Keith is this. It starts with this is Keith.
Right, exactly. So it's like this idea that I didn't. Yeah.
Do you know Dimitri Martin also has a hilarious thing about this? You guys know the comedian Dimitri Martin?
Yeah.
He talks about how he says, how come whenever we talk about people, we always say like, this is Josh. Like, this is Josh.
Right.
He goes, because it sounds weird to say, hey guys, he is Josh.
Right.
It's so good. But like, just point to the person, and it's this, which maybe has an underlying like, this whole collection right here is Josh.
Right.
And everything that he does,
and that's why you can like a name that you would not normally like,
and
because
the opposite
the name
is-
doesn't matter.
And the opposite though is how many names did I grow? And I remember this like in 4th grade, like thinking I hate this name because I hate you.
And that's why you can't have a kid named that.
Yeah, or I could never date this person because I have this attachment to what was behind that name.
Right.
And it took me meeting another human being with that same name to go, that's not that bad.
Well, it's like how you can't marry somebody with like the same name as your mom.
Yeah,
because it's weird,
What
right?
What do you think of like an ex-girlfriend though? Like if you met someone and you broke up with them, and then the next person you met had the same name, do you think that would be difficult?
I think a certain level of maturity needs to step in there if she's worth dating.
Yeah.
But it's not. But it's not like you wouldn't think about it,
Right.
No, you like this. Hello.
I would say this. Whatever the maturity level is, like I would understand that there's a barrier that you might not be able to get over, depending on how hard, like how bad that relationship was.
Okay. Well, that's kind of intense though if you think about it, because you go, really? We're gonna give so much meaning to the name that isn't actually the thing we're referring to. We're referring to the thing behind the name.
But here's the thing. It does refer to the stuff behind
it. Because it's associated with.
That's what I'm saying. That was a different key.
I guess the situation is like, so say you dated someone and they abused you. And then you meet someone else with that same name.
Yes.
Are you ever going to be able to really see them as not partly that person who abused you because of the name? Because you associate with that name abuse.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying so that's a really good example, right? Because that's a whoa example. Like I have to think through that. And I think what I'm asking is, okay, so if that were true, let's say my wife dated a guy named Travis, and he beat her, or emotional abuse, whatever, some sort of abuse, and she just goes, I can never hear that name. Well, okay, well the part of that I would never say that. I can totally understand that. How about that? I get that on some of those. In fact, I would never push a person.
Right.
I'm asking those, like, so then that person can never.
Right. And
I think there's another element of like, I would want to help that person be sturdy, confident, heal, all that kind of stuff, to be able to go, oh, it was that behind that name. That name wasn't it. The name wasn't it. It was that. Right. But I would have I would be beyond. I would hope compassion to go. I get
that's what I'm
that.
saying. I think there's some part of it's like, if you just didn't like him because it was a bad breakup, that's fine. But like if there's some really deep seated psychological things that you associate with that name, like it's very difficult.
Which is a really good point to our conversation, because that is the crux of it. It's kind of like, whoa, man, the power in that which is behind the name is kind of everything. All those, what is it? You guys call it properties?
In a good way or a bad way. Which is why, like, if I have like my dog Elton is like the best dog in the world, but I know that eventually in like 100 years he's gonna die one day. Probably not, but maybe. And
seems eternal.
But because of like how great Elton is, I'm not gonna name my next dog Elton. You know what I mean? Because
but you know what people do?
But then there's the ones who do that. Like
every time they have a dog, its name is Cheddar.
Elton,
or they name it closely to that name.
Evan.
Well, I think I had some family members who had a dog named Tasha and then a dog named Sasha. After them.
Dude, his names. Hey, this is kind of funny to think about. Is
because the attachment.
Here's something funny to think about with pet names. How weird is it to have a dog named like Matthew or something? Oh, you know what I mean?
I had a dog. I didn't. I don't claim it. It lived in my house. Its name was Eddie.
You go. That's a human name.
How many times have you met an Eddie and just thought of that dog?
But imagine meeting a dog with its owner. Like, you know?
I like the idea that you meet a dog without its owner. Just knocks the door.
But Kyle frequents dog parks a lot.
And so you ask the owner, like, what's your dog's name? And they say, like, Steve. It's Jessica. Yeah. You're like, oh, that's, you would immediately go like, oh, that's weird.
Yeah. Like, and my question was like, did it come with that name or did you name
that?
Or
like, oh, this dog's name is Andrew.
And I just like, and your answer to this question determines whether we keep talking.
Right.
And so if you named your dog Jessica.
And so that's also in the power of names. That like, that dog is still the same dog, but it's not weird to me.
Yeah.
It would be weird if
that dog is not weird, not just the person.
If the owner had a weird name though, like my dog's name is Jessica and my name's Sunset. Like,
I'm Buckles. This is my dog John. Like,
right. And so that's kind of funny too. Is how we associate with animals that like you're supposed to have a stupid name because you're an animal.
You're a nonsense.
And I think
yeah, this is rocks.
And that could be is within
dumbass.
within the whole name game is maybe that is a little bit of like it helps make the distinction between like humanizing and non-humanizing, that like you don't get to be Andrew because you're a dog.
Well, and
that's a good point.
And I asked this question is certain people, there's certain names that we have associations with right off the bat, right? Like, and so if you want to go classic stereotype of like the jocks, the nerds, you know, and so bullies or whatever. And so bully can also have a big giant bully can almost have kind of a punk looking name. You know what I'm saying? Like kind of like a non-threatening, not like there's an
we'll use the one from like Back to the Future, Biff.
Yes.
Biff is like a nonsense. It's like that doesn't scare me at all.
No, but then Biff.
But because he's scary, because he's a bully, like it carries more weight to it.
Well, there's a cartoon, Home Movies.
Yeah.
And the bully on it. Do you remember the bully's name? Oh, this is gonna. Oh, so good.
Is that with Coach McGurk?
Yeah,
Brendan.
Yeah.
And
look it up.
And so Shannon.
Oh yeah.
Shannon.
Yeah.
But it's a guy.
Yeah.
Right. But then I've met other guys named Shannon. But the humor in it is we associate that with a female name. And that's interesting because we've seen probably over I don't know how many years we've seen a lot of people give, you know, when I say Jerry, you think of a man. But one of my old buddies, his wife's name's Jerry, and
that's another thing about
which
like,
is we think it's that's cool.
I think
she's cool.
Certain unisex names are like whatever gender of the person who you saw like first learned that name, that name is always associated with that gender.
Right.
Yeah, so
like,
when you hear it,
I knew there was a couple Morgans in my school, and they were both girls. And anytime I hear Morgan, even if it's a guy, I'm like, that's it's just
wrong.
a little off to me because it's like, and again, not a good thing. I'm just like I've always associated with the girls I grew up with.
Not a bad thing.
So it's
either.
like exactly.
Right.
But it's always like, oh, that's a little interesting. Like,
it's just unexpected.
Like, I don't expect it to be that. I expect it to be.
I hope you never
female.
meet Morgan Freeman, man, because she'll make a fool of
yourself.
yourself.
Don't make a fool of yourself out of yourself.
Dude, I hope I don't meet anyone famous.
It's like it's like the Paul McCartney situation all over again with you.
Yeah, I was like, what Paul McCartney? No, I didn't even get a chance to make a fool out of myself.
No, what was the one you?
You're telling us about.
You were saying like, was that nice to see you again and that whole thing, but it's.
Someone else. It was on the Beatles episode.
That was with a guy from Glee. It was a guy on Glee, Artie, who's Kevin McHale. And I said, hey, man, good to see you. And he said, hey, like, good to see you, too. And I thought, you don't mean that.
Yeah. Something else, but it doesn't matter.
Shaking that, have you?
Yeah. Nice.
So, but yeah,
bringing that up.
Name, like the associations of names and...
because it is, to me, it is fascinating that it, you know, kind of figuring out like, dang, why don't I like that name? Or, yeah, that name makes sense to you. You're an engineer. Right. You know, because there's all these associations, like, with even, it's almost like the name matches the disposition. Right. Like, you're like you would almost be confused. Because, so you could say there's these alpha males out there, right? And then you could say there's these guys that aren't alpha males, which is, that's not a problem. But is, that, you know,
but there's even within the sets of propositions that we attach to names, they're not even necessarily specifically from that person. There's also like social, cultural propositions that you attach to it, right? So like one of my favorite sketches in the last few years is the East-West Bowl game with the Key and Peele sketch where they do like names.
And it's like ridiculous.
Right, because what my brother, and I'm sure we've all noticed this, but they tapped into the idea that we've all started to slowly notice that athletes have ridiculous names. I don't know why, and it's all over athletics. It's not just it's not just football. It's not just baseball.
Mainly
it's all
football,
of them.
though.
It is a lot of football.
Mainly football.
Or soccer, international soccer.
Yes.
Yeah. Also that.
Yeah.
And again, it's funny because it's like even within like the Spanish team, even within traditional Spanish names, like they're even a little different.
Yeah.
Like so it's like. Within traditional American names, we we have Smith and all these ones, but then like the names that we see most common in
Right.
football are not those. You know what I mean? So it's interesting. I don't know what that has to whether it's like they had unique names so they went to a unique.
But then culturally, a lot of names make sense that don't make sense outside of that culture.
Right, exactly. So that's the other thing.
Like in the Latino Hispanic community, there are names that make sense, and then you have like me, who's like as white as can be, and walk in and you ask me my name and I tell you it's Juan, you'd be like, that is surprising.
Yeah.
Like, it's fine. It's fine. I would have never guessed
your
that.
Your initial association with that comes from what was your first experience?
Well, So like Tom Segura recently was talking, I forget if it was on a podcast or in his new special, he talks about how the fact that he knows Spanish because his mom is, I think, Peruvian, something like that.
Yeah.
So he grew up, so it's like, you don't expect a dude named Tom to speak fluent, perfect Spanish.
Sure.
You just don't expect it, right? And so he's talking about how that's always something that he deals with in his life because it's not something that people would associate with him. And he looks white, he looks all this sort of stuff. You don't think, well, that guy would know it. So it's like, so there's these cultural and social associations with names or matching name to look or matching name to whatever.
To your life's pursuit.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I match anytime I see a dinosaur, whether it's Jurassic Park or not, I automatically think of Steven Spielberg. So,
like the actual dinosaur?
Yeah, when
I
see
Steven Spielberg?
No. No, but like
sorry,
when I think of like if you say like, hey, Steven Spielberg made this, even if it's not like even related to Jurassic Park, I automatically think Jurassic Park. So like I tie his name like, and same thing with Stephen King. Someone says horror books. Might not be written by Stephen King, but I think of Stephen King. Like it's.
So you're like it's whatever. Like he's producing, Steven Spielberg helped produce like the new Star Wars movie, and you're like, are there going to be dinosaurs in it?
Yeah.
Your reaction is Jurassic Park.
Yeah, because in my head I've tied that name to those types of things.
Well, and that's which would be maybe an interesting discussion, but it's just on language in and of itself.
Yeah, and this has a lot to do with sort of how language works and like what language, what reference. What is a referent? So like that's the linguistic term. It's like what is something referred to? It has a referent, and a lot of philosophers of language and linguists have said that like names kind of don't have references. Like they don't have reference.
That's interesting.
Right? They are, and again, there's a bunch of theories, and we could go through them at another time. But I think it's interesting to think about how we understand names and how we come to think about like what someone's name means and who they are and all that. So
Yeah, I think I got my answer.
Yeah.
What about this?
.com. That's not a website.
I don't know. We're not going to vouch for whatever's there. If it is a website, just don't talk to us about it. If it's something we don't want to know.
That is not affiliated with us.
You're not officially endorsing whataboutthis.com.
Yeah. That was a knee-jerk reaction right there.
I panicked.
That was from an off-mic conversation.
Yeah.
All right.
That's it. That's all I have to say about that.
Well, guys, you can find this podcast on iTunes, podcast.com, Podbean, Google Play, Stitcher, and anywhere you can get podcasts from. Also, we have an email address, which is...
Do we have an email?
Do we have an email? No, we don't.
No, we have a Twitter.
What about this? .com.
We have a
WAT_podcast. That's us on Twitter at WAT_podcast.
You can reach out to us
and follow us on Facebook.
Talk to us. We
like
love
us,
to
rate and review us on iTunes. That's that way. It reaches more people. The more people that rate and review us, and it allows us to sort of keep doing this.
We want you guys to get involved.
Yep.
Also, if you're organized, maybe you can join the team.
Yeah.
A year later, we didn't know if we had an email.
If you've got a knack for gentlemen and emails. Boy, do we have an opportunity.
Again, that is a wide net. I don't know if we want to cast.
Boy, do we have an opportunity for you.
Just, what is the Venn diagram of people good with gentlemen and emails?
100%.
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't feel this position yet.
Yeah. I'm just trying to cast a wide net, and so we'll have a lot of opportunities.
We're going to get ZipRecruiter.com.
Facebook's targeting, Facebook's targeting algorithm would not be helpful here.
Yeah. What two things are you looking for?
We desperately need some behind-the-scenes work, though.
Someone who likes emails.
All right.
All right, guys.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Yeah.
Frank here from Super BS. talking about the things you know you love and the things you love to know. Join us weekly for a podcast about video games. Mostly. Ooh.